When my mother passed away, it felt like time stood still. Her absence echoed in every corner of our house, the way her laugh used to fill the kitchen, her quiet humming while folding laundry, the smell of her perfume in the hallway. I, Claire Matthews, was just 22, fresh out of college and ready to start a career in marketing. But all of that came to a halt when the phone rang one cold morning and Dad told me she was gone. It happened suddenly, a heart attack. There had been no signs, no warnings. She was only 51 and in seemingly good health. Dad, whose name is Richard Matthews, was shattered. I'd never seen my father cry until that day. His shoulders, always broad and strong, seemed to collapse under the weight of losing the woman he had loved for 30 years. I dropped everything, my job search, my plans to move to Chicago, and moved back home to Indianapolis to be with him. I thought he needed me, but as the weeks passed, it became clear that he wanted more than just my company. At first, it was small things. He asked me to sit with him during dinner instead of eating in my room. He wanted to watch our favorite family shows again, just like the old days. It seemed sweet, innocent. Even I was grieving, and he was too. Maybe we both just needed comfort. But then he began asking for things that made me uncomfortable. He wanted me to start wearing Mom's old perfume. He asked me to cook the same meals she used to make. Once I caught him looking at me while I was wearing one of Mom's old cardigans, and there was something in his eyes I couldn't explain. I dismissed it. Grief makes people behave oddly, I told myself. One day, about 2 months after Mom's death, I walked into the living room to find Dad going through an old photo album. He looked up and smiled. "You look just like her, Claire. Every day more and more." I didn't know how to respond. I loved my mother deeply, but I wasn't trying to replace her. I wasn't her shadow or echo, I was me. Then it happened. One night, while I was in the kitchen preparing tea, Dad walked in and placed his hand gently on my shoulder. "Claire," he said softly, "I've been thinking maybe we don't need to live in grief. Maybe we can keep her spirit alive through each other." The air felt like it was sucked out of the room. My hand trembled as I placed the kettle on the stove. "What do you mean, Dad?" He avoided my eyes. "I mean maybe we could be closer. You remind me so much of her, her kindness, her warmth, her presence." My heart pounded. I knew what he was hinting at, and it horrified me. "Dad, I'm your daughter." "I know," he said quickly. "I didn't mean anything wrong. I just miss her so much, and you're all I have now." That night, I didn't sleep. I locked my bedroom door and stayed awake trying to make sense of what he'd said. The line between grief and delusion had blurred for him. He wasn't thinking clearly, but I didn't know how to help. I couldn't talk to friends about this. How could I explain that my grieving father was projecting his love for my mother onto me? The next morning, I packed a small bag and left the house. I told Dad I was going to visit my friend Natalie in Cincinnati. That wasn't true. I went to a nearby motel and stayed there while I tried to decide what to do. Should I call a therapist, the police? Would they even believe me? He hadn't touched me inappropriately, not yet, but the undertones of his words chilled me to the bone. I needed help, and I couldn't do this alone. I called my mother's sister, Aunt Linda. She and Mom had been close, though they drifted apart in recent years. I told her everything. At first, there was silence on the other end of the line. Then she said, "Claire, listen to me. Your father loved your mother too much, maybe more than was healthy. When she died, it broke him in a way that might not be fixable. You need to get out of that house for good." I cried on the phone with her for what felt like an hour. Aunt Linda offered to let me stay with her in Louisville, at least until I figured things out. I accepted. The next step was confronting Dad. I didn't want to just disappear. I wanted to make sure he knew what he said wasn't okay. I drove back the next day and found him sitting in the living room watching old home videos. One showed me and Mom baking cookies together when I was about 12. His eyes were glassy when he turned to me. "You left," he said. "I needed space," I replied. "Dad, we need to talk." He looked down, already knowing what I was about to say. I sat across from him and told him how his words made me feel. I told him it wasn't fair to put that kind of emotional weight on me, especially not after losing Mom. I wasn't his wife, I was his daughter. I loved him, but I couldn't be what he wanted me to be. Tears filled his eyes. He didn't argue. He just said, "I'm sorry." I wasn't thinking clearly. I don't know who I am without her. That's something a therapist can help with, I told him, not me. He nodded. For the first time in weeks, I saw clarity in his eyes. He promised he'd get help. I didn't fully believe him, but I wanted to hope. I told him I'd be staying with Aunt Linda for a while and that I would check in on him. He didn't protest. Moving to Louisville gave me space to breathe. Aunt Linda was understanding and patient. She never pushed, never prodded, just let me heal. I found a job at a local ad agency and slowly started piecing my life together again. But part of me always carried the weight of what happened. I checked on Dad regularly. He did go to therapy, at least for a while. His therapist, Dr. Henry, even called me once with Dad's permission to assure me that he was making progress. I appreciated that. It helped rebuild some trust. About a year after Mom's death, I returned to the house not to stay, but to visit. It felt different. Dad looked healthier. He had started gardening again, something he and Mom had loved doing together. He even showed me a small rose bush he planted in her memory. We talked for a long time that day about Mom, about grief, about boundaries. He apologized again, this time with more clarity, and I forgave him. I didn't forget, but I forgave. Grief can twist people in unimaginable ways. It doesn't excuse the pain they cause, but it does explain it. Looking back, I'm still stunned by what he asked of me. It's the kind of story people don't talk about, the kind that gets buried because it's too uncomfortable, too strange. But I lived it, and I came out stronger. Today, I live in Nashville and run a small creative agency. Dad and I speak occasionally, but our relationship will never be the same, and that's okay. Some things change forever. What matters is that I protected myself, found my voice, and chose to walk away when staying could have destroyed me. Because when someone you love crosses a line, even in grief, you have the right to say no. You have the right to leave. And sometimes, that's the most loving thing you can do for both of you.